Thank you for watching the Finance and Affirmations podcast. I appreciate you being here. Make sure you click the subscribe button so you'll be alerted when I post new content. Enjoy the episode. Hello, Finance and Affirmations family. I have the pleasure of having Lashea Reeves of 8 Cents in a Jar. She is the founder and the executive director of this 501c3 organization. Lashea, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me and to represent 8 Cents in a Jar. I greatly appreciate that.
So just tell us a little bit about 8 Cents in a Jar. What is it? How did it start? Kind of give us that background.
Absolutely. So, for those of you who have never heard of 8 Cents in a Jar, we are an award-winning nonprofit that is based in Florida. But I am happy to say that we are having conversations of expansion. So, just because we're in Florida doesn't mean that you cannot receive our services. But our primary goal is to help students of color in marginalized communities to learn how to save money, acquire assets, and build wealth. And so we know within the United States, typically when it comes to conversations about money, financial literacy, depending upon the state that you're in, those conversations do not take place in the school system or at home. And most students, especially students from low to moderate income neighborhoods and families who have a unique story, may not have the tools and resources that they need to be or to achieve economic mobility. So our goal is simple. Instead of waiting for adults to make mistakes about money, let's go ahead and teach students how to save money, acquire assets, and build wealth, starting at the age of 8, so we can monitor and have a stronger probability of our students being the first in their family to become millionaires, but most importantly, to achieve economic mobility. So that's who we are and what we do.
And so what made you make the decision to start? I mean, well, I guess you kind of already answered it. You wanted to start early, but 8 years old, why was that important for you, that particular age?
And that's a great question. So two things take place. One, when you think about money, as early as 5, students, kids, they're already start to form behaviors, patterns about money. Also, if you think about the environment that they're in, so whether your parents are good with money, your grandparents are not good with money, or whatever that case may be, they're starting to form the notion in their opinion, but then their relationship with money. So it was very important for 8 Cents in a Jar to start ensuring that their good positive habits, their viewpoint, how they feel about money, spending money, saving money, even just having the conversation about money, we wanted to make sure that it was ingrained in them early on. But then second, just even with my whole life story, so I won't go into too much detail, but just know being someone that was third generation of receiving public assistance, generational poverty was very prevalent, not only in my home, but then just in my neighborhood and just stuff what I assumed could not happen at the age of 10, 14, 16, 17, even 21. We wanted to make sure that our students did not have those same barriers or, notions that, oh, if you come from this zip code, that means you can't have this, or only certain individuals are able to have an abundance life.
Wow. So I actually do like to get more in depth about your background. So one of the things that I always ask my guest is, what was your first financial education? And then did that inform you as you became an adult through college? What were your triumphs and what were your challenges as a result of that?
Awesome. So I will say, just even with my personal story, it was definitely the financial lessons of what not to do that left me a lot more curious than having responses or answers. So, long story short, at 14, my mother passed away.
Mm.
And even during that time, my sister, she was recovering from cancer. So, a child, at 7 years old, 3 years old, having an opportunity through that lifespan or through those years, to go through cancer treatment. So when my mom passed, it was due to hospital negligence, not following procedures or protocols. And we ended up suing the hospital and received over $4.2 million at first. But because we didn't understand money, because of just the laws that were in place at that time in the state of Florida, in less than 2 years, all of that money was gone. So we ended up being homeless, living with distant relatives, and then just having a very unproductive life
Mhm.
and not being able to meet the basic necessities of just to survive and live. Fast forwarding to college, where I was, had an opportunity to attend college. My freshman year, I became a teenage mom. During that time, I also went through domestic violence.
Mhm.
And it was during that time in college that I found out that my dad was being admitted to hospice.
Mhm.
Knowing that we've never had a conversation about savings account, checking, life insurance, or anything, I took out student loans to bury him just in case, and he ended up passing away. So, with going through one now having to, adopt or be there for my younger sister, being her legal guardian, but then two, also finding out that he was using our name to put bills or putting bills in our name,
Mhm.
all of those things, plus some more. We just don't have enough time. It just really gave
Mhm.
me the crash course into finances, but then also what can go wrong and how deeply and bad things can go wrong. And I would definitely say it wasn't until college where initially I wanted to work at a bank only because I wanted to expose them. I'm like, how is it that we don't have any money? What's going on? Why is it that our accounts are overdrawn? I thought I was going to take them to like Channel 9 investigative news and like, catch them in a Ponzi scheme or something. But
Mhm.
not realizing the reason that our accounts were in the negative because we did not know how to manage our accounts. And it wasn't until I was just having a conversation out loud, watching the news with my boss. And I remember like CNN was going on and it was talking about the real estate boom and the cost of owning a home. And I made a comment out loud. It's like, oh, like I didn't know that people could own a home, especially people of color. And I wonder if one day I'll be able to own a home. And my boss at the time, he was like, well, why can't you own a home? And I stopped and I paused and I had no response on why I couldn't. So I was like, okay, well, let me look up the steps of what I need to actually do it.
Mhm.
And little did we know that is where the idea of 8 cents in a jar began, from conversations like that. And even from my own turbulation. So as I mentioned with my dad, after I got all of that fixed, I literally had 8 cents to my name. I
Wow.
did not have enough for a bank account. So I went and grabbed that 8 cents and I said never again.
Mm.
Again, not understanding that would be the foundation for an award-winning nonprofit that we're talking about today.
Wow. I just want to go back because I understand that you said your family did not know how to manage those finances, but you also mentioned something about like the state laws and things. How did that impact what happened to you?
Absolutely. So at the time, and we're talking about late 90s that all of this is taking place, going up until, the 2000, the start of the millennial.
Mhm.
Anytime a family had an opportunity to really or receive a lump sum, and
Mhm.
then we're talking about minors that are involved, not only minors, but one of the minors was considered, special needs because of the cancer treatments that she was going through.
Mhm.
Well, at that time, we had a financial guardian appointed to us to advise our, financial choices, a financial advisor on our accounts. So
Okay.
everyone over 18, you're over 18, do what you need to do, right?
Right.
But for the minors, it needed to be someone that was appointed by the state in
Mhm.
order to be in charge of those conversations.
Got it. Okay, that makes when you said guardian, I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. All right. And so that was obviously a lot. I mean, that was a lot that you had to go through. All those steps with mom, sister, your dad, and then, ending up with that 8 cents. And so you got that kind of epiphany at the bank about what you could do to own your own home. So, can you tell me then what was the first step in creating the organization that you currently are the executive director of?
Absolutely. So it wasn't until years later, at least 15 years later, that Eight Cents in a Jar began. So I definitely do have to give a shout out to Rollins College, but most importantly, the Upward Bound program and any Upward Bound program that is out there in the United States. So just kudos and shout out to them. So through Upward Bound, as one of their core curriculums, talking about financial literacy, not only with the students, but with the parents. And so for that Rollins College Upward Bound, they used to always contract, a banker to come out and have conversations. So at the last minute, that banker could not attend. So they knew that I worked in the finance field. And they asked, hey, Lashea, do you mind coming out and having a conversation with students? And I did. So they gave me like last year's PowerPoint of what took place a day in advance. And so I looked at it and I was like, hold on. You trying to tell me you want to talk about this with students, especially first generation college students or, that are potential to be it? I was like, honey, I'm in finance myself and this is boring and I don't even know what you're talking about. So I literally rewrote it from a lived experience perspective and brought in the environment into the conversation. Got their permission, rewrote it, gave the presentation, and it was like, oh, this is the first time in history that no one fell asleep. Not only that, it was a long list of questions, so much so that they had to delay the next session by 30 minutes so we can get through all of the conversations, the questions, and the transparency and vulnerability.
Mhm.
So it was at that time they was like, hey, we definitely want to provide you with some type of stipend. Can you send us an invoice and tell us more about your organization? So I did not need to be in nonprofit to know this. When someone's trying to give you money, you make sure you have things set up, right? So
Mhm.
I did not have it set up, but guess what? I said I'm going to
Okay.
get it set up.
Okay.
And it was then another conversation when someone pulled me aside, like, you have something here. Like, you really
Mm.
should start a company, a nonprofit. I'm like, me, like that was not on my bingo card to do.
Okay.
But after convincing, we ended up starting in 2016 where one, what do I want to call this company? It can be something generic, it can be something plain, but anytime you can make it personable and distinguishable,
Mhm.
then that's where it came from. And so even, at the friend, so shout out to my friends and my family, who was helping me brainstorm the idea. And
Mhm.
that's really where Eight Cents in a Jar came from, just even from personal testimonies. But then if we look deep into the name, 1-8 New Beginnings, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Talking about affirmations. I know you're a person of faith.
Yes.
So just even the new beginnings, in the biblical system that we have.
Mhm.
But then also when we think about the first memory of saving for students,
Yeah.
it's typically placing your spare change in a jar or a piggy bank. So even with that, it was just like destiny to have it called Eight Cents in a Jar,
Mhm.
where we got all of our paperwork filed in the state of Florida. And then once we did that, it was like, okay, well, who we are, what do we do?
Mhm.
And it really took us 2 years to find our identity through trial and error.
Okay.
Initially, we thought, oh, it's going to be financial literacy for everyone, including those. And
Mhm.
then it was not so much. There are so many other organizations that do that.
Mhm.
But then it was a real, true conversation with ourselves. What can we do that no one else can do? How can we teach something that most people may think is boring, but make it relatable, make it actionable, make it tangible? And so, one of the things that we realized that we're doing and did not know was providing financial social work to students.
Mhm.
And that's became our core of who we are. So, yes, people do financial literacy. We don't even say that we do financial literacy. So, what we do teach is personal finance, economic education through financial social work. And we also are a social science organization where we're literally tracking generational mobility, intergenerational mobility, which means are our students at 8 cents in a jar better off financially than their parents at a given point in time? So if we were to talk to their parents and, at the age of 28, were their
Mhm.
parents struggling? Did they have a negative net worth or were they drowning in credit card debt?
Mhm.
If we can get the parents to paint that story and then ask those students to monitor where they are, if they're better off, then we've done our job.
Wow. That's amazing. And so financial social work. So speak to that just a little bit more for me. Kind of unpack that a little bit when you call it financial social work.
Absolutely. So I do want to be clear.
Mhm.
8 Cents in a Jar, we did not create financial social work. That goes
Mhm.
out to brilliant people where it has already been out there. But I
Mhm.
will say that we're probably one of the few that connect that to students.
Okay.
So with students, regardless if you realize it or not, you have your interactions with finances, right? So just
Mhm.
like you asked me, what is your first interaction with finances? Believe it or not, some of our students go through financial trauma,
Mhm.
especially students in the hardest hit population or the ACE population, adverse childhood experience,
Mhm.
where if you experience, the lights being cut off or being evicted, your car, watching your parents or grandparents or guardian cars being towed,
Mhm.
or living in foster care, moving with your parents that has some direct or indirect financial trauma with that. And we hold those things.
Mhm.
So, me growing up being poor, when I did have money, like, oh no, like I'm afraid to spend it,
Mhm.
like I have to safeguard it. But then you have
Yeah.
some people, because I grew up poor, I want to spend everything and get everything that I never had before. That
Mhm.
is a form of financial trauma
Mhm.
or something that we have to look into
Yeah.
because whether we want to realize it or not, it impacts our decisions with money. We know that money impacts our decisions in the workplace.
Mhm.
And we know those, there are things that give us financial stress. So even as young as 8,
Yeah.
those cores are being built. So what can 8 Cents in a Jar do to not only diminish that, treat it, give them financial therapy, but then now give them the slate to build wealth?
Wonderful. So yeah, that is just so aligned with the work that I'm doing with finance and affirmations. Very similar. And it's just funny, I have not heard it called financial social work. But what I have said is, I do healing centered financial education and engagement because we do sometimes suffer from trauma that we don't even realize is there. We also suffer from money shame and are not really able to identify like where that came from. And then the whole thing that you were talking about with like the mindset and the shift, like, do you even believe, you are worthy to have money and live in abundance? So I'm that's just really exciting for me because I know that it's, aligned with what you're doing. And I know that's definitely something that is needed in our community. Well, that ends part one of my conversation with Lashea. Stay tuned for a future episode when Lashea provides valuable tips on how to start and grow a nonprofit organization. I hope you enjoyed watching the Finance and Affirmations podcast. If you haven't already done so, click the subscribe button. Until next time, blessings.